Let's welcome back our old friend, Joe Giglio, because Joe O was clipping his toenails, couldn't be on the show. So we get Joe G. Before we get to Joe, now is a great time to remind you that all of our great sports betting wagertainment is available on the podcast. Just subscribe and follow the Daily Tip wherever you get your podcast. So let's get to him. Appearing on the Roman guest line, Joe Giglio, the co-host of BetQL Daily, immediately after us with Joe Ostrowski and Aaron Hawksworth. Joe, what's your take on this Matisse Thybulle situation? Do you think this is going to be a difference maker if the Sixers do indeed play the Raptors in the playoffs?
Yeah, good morning, guys. I'm glad at least one Joe from BetQL Daily is able to hop on and enjoy you guys today. And yeah, the Matisse situation it's fascinating. And we were kind of wondering this in Philadelphia because a couple weeks ago, ESPN had reported they reached out to 4 teams, the 4, I guess, most likely teams to play Toronto in the first round just based on the standings right now. And ESPN got the all clear from the Milwaukee Bucks, and they got the all clear from the Miami Heat, where they did not get an all clear from the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. You don't have to be a genius to read through that. There's someone on those teams, at least one person, that's unvaccinated. So they didn't want to say who. They didn't want to throw the guy under the bus. We now know it's likely Matisse Thybulle. That's why he's ineligible to play. Guys, I think this is a big deal. Now, I'm not sure for tonight for one game in the regular season if it's going to make an appreciable difference, but Matisse is one of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA. I mean, the Sixers didn't want to give him up at the James Harden deal because of that. Daryl Morey has talked about him as a guy who can win a Defensive Player of the Year one day. He reminds me of Tony Allen, the former guard for the Boston Celtics and Grizzlies that was a great defensive player. And I think of a playoff series against Toronto, if the Sixers play them, I mean, he'd be the guy on the ball, on Fred VanVleet in big moments. And I think it would hurt the Sixers. Do I still think they'd win a series against Toronto? Probably, but that could be a sweat, and that could go 6 or 7, if Matisse has to miss 3 games in that series.
Joe, when you look at regular season MVP, we've now seen Nikola Jokic take over Joel Embiid. Jokic at minus 275 at BetMGM, and Embiid is 2-1. And I know Embiid complained a little bit about Jokic overtaking him because of this straw poll, essentially, that was taken amongst NBA executives, which helped move the number. Do you think Embiid has a legitimate gripe here, or is it just Nikola Jokic having another MVP-like season?
So I'm of two minds on this. I do think he has a gripe because really the only thing that has changed is the kind of the thoughts of the voters. I mean, the play on the court hasn't changed. In fact, Embiid has been, just as good the last 6 weeks as he was really before that. But I do think it's weak for Joel Embiid to say this out loud. I mean, the idea that he has, or he's throwing out there, that there's some sort of Philly bias against MVP candidates is just nonsensical. Like, go through the years. Anytime a Philadelphia player has had an MVP caliber season, they've either won the award or they've been right there. I mean, this is Joel Embiid making an excuse or trying to make people feel bad if he doesn't win. It's just not true. In baseball last year, Bryce Harper won the award on a team that only won 82 games. In 2017, if Carson Wentz didn't get hurt, he probably wins the MVP. I mean, you go back to years, Allen Iverson. When MVP caliber seasons happen in Philadelphia, there's no bias. In fact, I would argue the other way, that Philadelphia fans yell and scream until the guy gets the award. So I think it's weak that Joel said it out loud. I just think this is a matter of the voters see that Jokic has not gotten any health back. Meanwhile, Embiid got Harden about 7 or 8 weeks ago, and I think that's flipped the thoughts. But yeah, I'm done with Embiid complaining. Just go out there and play basketball, Joel.
Also, it's discounting the season that Jokic is having because I think both of these guys can have a great season. It's just Jokic on paper is looking a little better than Joel Embiid. But we're talking with Joe Giglio. He is the co-host of BetQL Daily immediately after us with Joe O and Aaron Hawksworth, and also on WIP in Philadelphia weekday evening. So, Joe, we've got to talk some baseball and your Phillies. Let's lay out the situation in which the Phillies can win the NL East, because I know that you're probably on the Phillies. Am I wrong?
You actually are wrong. Yeah, I don't trust the Phillies. It's funny. We always have these conversations about these different teams, and I just generally, it's just my nature. I always feel more optimistic about the Eagles and trust the Eagles kind of like just over the last 20 years. I feel like they'll figure it out. Meanwhile, the Phillies, the opposite. I just feel like they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. Now, that being said, I don't think this is going to be a flop. I don't think they're going to be bad. Their win total, depending on where you look, said about the mid-80s, 86.5. That's right around where I think they'll be. I think they'll be about an 86-win team. I worry about their starting pitching depth. Their defense could be horrendous. But they're going to hit. It's going to be like a beer league softball team. But, Chelsea, as far as the NL East, the Braves are the team that it's just the easiest to trust them. They have, the best roster 1 through 40. They have the best GM in the division. They have one of the best players in baseball coming back within a month or so with Acuna. And I don't think the drop-off from Freddie Freeman to Matt Olson is much, if at all. I mean, I think Matt Olson is probably the most underrated first baseman in baseball. So Freddie was their heartbeat, but I think Olson will keep things going. So I don't downgrade the Braves much. They're just the easiest one to trust. So I would still bet them to win the NL East, and then the Phillies will be in that kind of wild card mix with a bunch of other teams there.
So, Joe, that leads me to my next question, which is in the division and the New York Mets. And a lot of people like the Mets based on the moves they've made during the offseason. But Chelsea and I always say that the Mets are going to Met. Do you see that happening, which would, again, open the door for the Braves?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, this is what the Mets the Mets have never lived up to the hype. Probably, in our lifetimes. We got to go back to 1986. I mean, it's a long time since the Mets actually delivered on what they were supposed to be. Now, I do think they've built a pretty deep team, which I think you need over the 162. And if they can ever get DeGrom and Scherzer on the mound at the same time, which feels, maybe more unlikely than likely because of Jacob DeGrom's injury history the last couple of years, I believe it would be the best 1-2 punch baseball has seen since Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling. Like their ceiling, if you're looking like mid-season and they're hovering around the playoff spot, like their ceiling is they can win the whole thing. Just because if they get in the playoffs, those two pitchers could dominate everyone. But there's a lot of variance with them. There's a lot of worry with them. I would go under on their win total, Jenks. Even if they're a playoff kind of team, I still think it's more like mid-80s, upper 80s than over 90 wins.
Because they've only eclipsed 90 wins 0 times since 2006, and that includes the year that they went to the World Series. They had exactly 90 wins that season. But Joe G, it's opening day. We've got baseball on the slate. Are there any games that you like today?
Yeah, well, of course there are. I mean, it's weird, and I know baseball just picked up the schedule today, where the lockouts ended, and they just said we'll just start today. So it's almost like a soft opening. You got almost half the games, and a couple were rained out today, and then everybody else tomorrow. So it's almost like opening day over 2 days. But couple thoughts I had just looking at the games in the card this morning. Cleveland against Kansas City. Shane Bieber back and healthy. I would look at his K prop over against the Kansas City Royals. Some young players in that lineup. Probably a little more swing and miss than Kansas City's had in recent years. And then one of the late games tonight, the Arizona game against San Diego. Madison Bumgarner taking the mound, opening day for Arizona, and Manny Machado's had pretty good history against him. I wouldn't be against a home run prop on a guy like Manny Machado tonight. So I'll be looking at the Guardians game, and then maybe a Machado home run prop tonight.
Joe Giglio, co-host of BetQL Daily immediately after us with Joe Ostrowski and Aaron Hawksworth. You can hear him on WIP in Philadelphia weekday evenings and follow him on Twitter at Joe Giglio Sports. So, Joe, I don't know the answer to this, but do you have a future out there? Is there someone you really like for MVP, Cy Young? What sort of futures bets do you have on the table?
Yeah, I've got a lot. Baseball's always my favorite sport to bet the future. I feel like it's the most fun sweat over the year. It's like every day, kind of something's intertwined with your future, whether it be big picture or small picture. So I'll give you a couple that I'm really interested in for this coming season. So now the number has moved on this. So whatever it is right now, it's not as good as it was 2 weeks ago. I feel like there's a lot of steam on it. But Kyle Schwarber to lead baseball in home runs a couple of weeks ago, guys, it was 50-1, and we've seen it's been down to 25-1, 30-1 in some places. He's in Philadelphia now, which is a great hitter's park. And last year he kind of unlocked everything with Kevin Long when he was in Washington. That's who the Phillies hitting coach is now. And if you look at last year, he had 32 home runs in only 399 at-bats because he had a hamstring injury. That was about 12 and a half, at-bats per home run. You look at that across all of baseball, only Ohtani and Tatis hit home runs at a higher clip than that. So he hits a lot of home runs. He goes to a hitter's park. I think Schwarber 50-1 to lead baseball in home runs is an interesting one. And then in terms of a couple win totals, I like Miami over. I think their pitching is going to be really good and they'll be competitive. And then I took a flyer 28-1 on the Giants to win the World Series. I think there's regression coming there. They're not going to win 107 games, but they remind me of the Rays now, in which they just make players better. And I don't think the projection systems understand how good the Giants are going to be. 85.5 wins is silly. Dodgers probably win that division, but I wouldn't be surprised if the San Francisco Giants win a World Series.
Yeah, and the NL West is one of the more, I believe, in all of baseball, with the Dodgers, the Giants, who were good last year, and also the Padres, who are getting a little bit healthier. Before we let you go, one fun one. Do you have any bets on Tiger this weekend?
Of course I do. We were talking on the show yesterday about, betting Tiger and all the different props. And I was like, listen, guys, I need to have a Tiger bet. And I know, the idea of him winning is probably gotten out of control here, actually winning the Masters, just considering how little he's played the last couple of years and maybe what kind of shape he's in physically. So I think if you're jumping on that number now, it's a bad number compared to where it was a few days ago. But here's how I bet it. I took Tiger 20-1 to be, I took Tiger to be in the top 20 through round one. I could see Tiger playing well for one day, and then maybe just he can't do it for four and he falls off, and I don't think anyone would begrudge him for that. So I took Tiger at a pretty good plus number to be in the top 20 through round one. One good round by Tiger, everyone gets excited, and maybe you win a bet.
Jinx like that bet as well. We're all rooting for him. We're all hoping that Tiger at least looks a semblance of what he used to look like, but it's going to be tough. He's walking around with a limp, so it's tough sledding, but we all can dream, right? He is Joe Giglio. He's the co-host of BetQL Daily immediately after us with Joe Ostrowski and Aaron Hawksworth. You can hear him on WIP in Philadelphia weekday evenings talking all things Phillies sports. Great insight as always, Joe. Thanks for waking up with us.